My fiancé lied about a job offer and moved away to focus on himself, so I accepted the position he thought I didn't qualify for and became his boss's boss within a year. If you'd told me 2 years ago that I'd be someone's boss, let alone his boss, I'd have laughed in your face. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I genuinely thought life didn't work like that for people like me. The ones who play by the rules, put their head down, do the work, and still get passed over. My name's Elise. I'm 29 now, but this story starts when I was 27, living with my fiancé, Matt, in Charlotte, North Carolina. We'd been together for 4 years. We met in grad school. He was the charming, talkative marketing guy who seemed to know everyone, and I was the quiet systems engineer who mostly kept to myself. Opposites attract, I guess. We started dating during a group project. He told me he admired how methodical I was, how I always thought 2 steps ahead. I fell hard. He made me feel seen. Like I wasn't just the technical girl people came to for help with spreadsheets and code. With him, I felt like a woman, one with value beyond her logic and problem solving. So when he proposed, I said yes. We didn't have much money, but we had plans. A condo we were saving for. A dog we were going to adopt. Kids, maybe, in a few years. I even had a Pinterest board of wedding ideas. He never knew about it, but I had it. I worked in mid-level operations at a logistics tech company. I wasn't climbing the ladder fast, but I was stable, dependable. I liked the work. Matt, on the other hand, bounced from startup to startup. Sometimes he'd go months without a paycheck. He was always chasing the next big thing. I supported him, emotionally, financially, sometimes literally paying rent, covering groceries, putting his name on my health insurance. And I didn't complain. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You believe in them, even when the world hasn't caught up yet. But everything started to unravel the day he told me about the job in Chicago. He came home one evening with this huge grin on his face, like he'd just won the lottery. He said, "Babe, you're not going to believe this. They offered me the senior strategy position at Onyx Global, Chicago HQ. I blinked. Onyx? That's huge. Yeah, he said, already pacing. It's a massive opportunity. Like, career-changing. 6 figures. Travel. A team under me. I hugged him, genuinely thrilled. That's amazing. When do we move? He paused. And that's when the first crack appeared. See, that's the thing, he said slowly. They want me solo at first. Just until I'm settled. Maybe 6 months. A year max. Then you can come join me. We'll get a place together. But I need to focus, build something real. I remember the way my stomach turned at those words. Focus. Build something. As if our life in Charlotte wasn't already something real. But I nodded. Okay, I said, trying to be supportive. We can do long distance for a while. He kissed my forehead and told me I was the most understanding woman in the world. A week later, he left. I helped him pack. I helped him shop for suits. I cried on the day he drove away. He didn't cry. He said he couldn't emotionally afford it right now. He said he needed to channel everything into the new role. I told myself it made sense. For the next few weeks, I held it together. We FaceTimed every night, brief, distracted calls where he was always just about to run into a meeting or totally wiped. I sent him care packages. He sent one-word replies. 2 months in, I got suspicious. I hadn't seen a single photo of his new apartment, no mention of his office, no tags on LinkedIn, no forwarded mail. When I asked about it, he got defensive, said I was being paranoid, said he was under NDA and couldn't talk about certain things. It didn't sit right. I reached out to a friend who worked in HR at Onyx. I asked, casually, if they were hiring aggressively in strategy. She said no. In fact, they'd had a hiring freeze since Q1. That night, I stayed up till 3 a.m. digging. It didn't take long to unravel. There was no job, no offer letter, no apartment lease in his name. He hadn't moved to Chicago for work. He'd moved because he'd reconnected with someone. An old flame. Just a friend who apparently became more than that. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was logistical. Financial. He'd used me. Let me carry him through the hard parts. Then, once things looked promising, he jumped ship and acted like it was his ambition that took him there. I confronted him. Sent him screenshots. Proof. He didn't even deny it. He said, and I quote, "You're great, Elise. But you're not dynamic. You're not going to change the world. I need someone who challenges me, not someone who just keeps the lights on." That night, I sat on the kitchen floor, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Not because I lost him, but because I had believed I wasn't enough. Because I let him convince me that my quiet strength was weakness. But that was the last night I cried over him. Because that night, something shifted in me. I opened my old resume, and I hit apply. You ever get to that point where you're not even angry anymore? Just clear? Like the fog lifts, and everything that used to hurt now just makes sense? That was me the night I decided I was done. I applied to exactly 3 jobs, all in operations, all senior roles, all at companies I'd once told myself I wasn't qualified for because Matt had said things like, "You're reliable, Elise, not revolutionary," or "You're a solid number 2, not a number 1. Funny how someone can talk about you like you're furniture and make it sound like love. One of the jobs was at Halverson and Tate, a mid-sized but highly respected logistics consultancy. I'd done some freelance systems analysis for them a year prior, and they'd reached out a couple times about internal roles. Back then, Matt said the place was too corporate and would suck your soul. But now? Now I wanted my soul sucked by PTO, salary brackets, and a dental plan. I updated my resume. I added in the freelance work, the weekend seminars, the leadership training Matt used to call a waste of Saturdays. I submitted at 3:43 a.m., closed my laptop, and finally slept deeply. 3 days later, Halverson and Tate emailed me to schedule a panel interview. I wore a navy suit I'd never had a reason to wear before. I straightened my hair. I walked in like I belonged. And for the first time in years, I believed I did. The interview was 3 hours, 4 rounds. Halfway through, one of the directors said, "Your systems audits from last year saved us hundreds of hours in reconciliation. You're the only applicant who actually understands our back-end processes." I got the job offer 2 days later. And that was the moment everything changed. Day 1 at Halverson and Tate. I started as a senior operations strategist. The office was in Boston, which meant moving from Charlotte, but I didn't even blink. I sold the apartment Matt and I had shared. I donated the couch he'd picked. I deleted his number from my phone and his Netflix profile from my account. Boston was cold and fast and new. I loved it instantly. My first few months were a blur of flowcharts, stakeholder meetings, and cross-department audits. I got called into early leadership strategy discussions. I was told I had a mind like a blueprint. People listened when I spoke, trusted my data, my models. Then, in December, I was offered the lead role on a new logistics automation initiative. It was a big project, spanning 3 branches and 3 cities. I'd have a team under me, a seat at the table. The first location we'd be launching in? Chicago. The same Chicago where Matt had moved for work. The irony didn't even sting. I was too busy being focused, confident, and finally doing the kind of work I'd always been told I was too quiet for. But fate has a sick sense of humor. Or maybe karma just does perfect timing. Because the following March, we absorbed a smaller firm, DataPath Collective, during an acquisition. Guess who worked at DataPath? That's right, Matt. We meet again. I didn't know right away. It wasn't like I had a tracking chip on him or anything. But during the team integration meetings, I was sent a transition folder with all key staff, and I nearly spit out my coffee when I saw his name. Matthew Ronald Kirkwood, strategy consultant. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Same headshot from 2 years ago. Same smug grin. I called up my project manager and casually asked, "Hey, is Matt Kirkwood part of the rollout team in Chicago?" "Yep," he said. "You'll meet him during the Wednesday alignment session." Oh, I couldn't wait. But I didn't email him, didn't call, didn't let on that anything was off. I just waited. Wednesday morning, I walked into the Chicago office in a navy blazer and boots that meant business. I'd cut my hair, lost weight, changed the way I carried myself. The conference room had 10 people in it already. I scanned, not really expecting him to be there early. Matt was never early. But then I saw him. He was leaned back in a rolling chair, typing something on his phone. I stepped inside. He looked up, and the color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. "Elise," he said, blinking. I smiled. The professional, composed kind. "Hi, Matt. Nice to see you. You're here. I'm leading this rollout. You're on my team, right?" His jaw clicked shut. For the first time, Matt Kirkwood was speechless. You know that feeling when you catch someone in a lie and they know it, but you don't even have to say anything because your presence is the mic drop? That was me in that Chicago conference room. Matt barely managed to recover. His face was doing this involuntary twitchy thing, like his brain hadn't quite caught up with the fact that I was not only in the same room, but leading it. "I didn't know you. Worked for Halverson," he finally said. "Oh yeah," I said breezily, pulling out a chair at the head of the table. "Been here almost a year. They're amazing. So much better than the last place I worked. You know, before you ghosted me and moved states to focus on yourself." Okay. I didn't say that last part out loud, but I thought it so hard I'm pretty sure someone could have read it off my skin. We kicked off the meeting. I introduced myself as the Director of Strategic Rollouts. Matt's eyes flicked between me and the project leads like he was trying to figure out how this had happened. I was no longer the supportive fiancé, packing him lunches and proofreading his resumes. I was the one setting timelines, delegating strategy roles, and oh yeah, managing his entire team. Afterward, he cornered me outside the conference room. "Elise, can we talk?" I kept my voice even. "Sure. You've got 5 minutes before my next meeting." He blinked. "Okay." "Wow. So, you're really doing this now?" "Running the show." "I am." He scratched the back of his neck. "I guess I misjudged things." "You did." Repeatedly. Matt let out a little laugh like he was trying to make it all light. "This is wild. You look different." I didn't flinch. "So do you. Just shorter." He flinched. The audit. After that, Matt tried to play it cool. He acted like he was totally fine with me being his boss's boss. Like he'd moved on. Like none of it was weird. But I could tell he was squirming, especially once I began the full audit on their Chicago team's past project inefficiencies. See, part of the rollout involved a detailed review of why DataPath's systems were underperforming before the acquisition. Matt had overseen those systems. Let's just say, the data did not paint him in a good light. Reports were late, files mismanaged. His efficiency model had actually lost the company 3 major contracts because it misjudged delivery lead times by over 27%. I documented everything, not out of spite, but because it was my job. When I presented the findings to the board, one of the partners asked, "How did someone with this kind of record stay employed for this long?" Matt happened to be sitting in the back of the room. I didn't look at him when I answered. "Well, sometimes people know how to talk themselves into jobs they're not qualified for." Silence. Then someone chuckled. The email. 2 days later, I got an email from Matt. Subject, "Can we talk?" Body, "Elise. I've been thinking about everything, and I just want to say I'm sorry for the way I left, for not believing in you, for underestimating you. I know I messed up. I was insecure, and I took it out on you. Can we meet for coffee or lunch sometime? Just to talk. No pressure. Matt." I stared at it for a long time. The old me college Elise, 26-year-old Elise, would have jumped at this. Would have read it as regret and romantic. But this Elise? This Elise had built herself back from the inside out. I replied. Subject, can we talk? Body, Matt. I appreciate the apology. I truly hope you find peace with yourself. But I have nothing to say that wasn't already said with how I've lived since you left. We'll keep our interactions professional from here on out. Take care, Elise. The promotion. 3 weeks later, I was offered a VP role. Apparently, my rollout had been the most successful one in the company's regional history. The executive board voted unanimously. The new title came with a private office, a team of 30, and a salary number I never thought I'd see with my name on it. On my first day as VP, I walked into the same Chicago office where Matt now worked on a lower team. I passed him in the hallway. He nodded stiffly. Elise. Matt. He looked like he wanted to say more. I didn't slow down. After the promotion, everything moved fast. I was flown back to HQ in New York to meet with the board, sign contracts, and go through executive orientation. I got a car service, a stipend for relocation, and full autonomy to build out my department. And the first time I walked into my new office, sleek, minimalist, with a skyline view, I didn't cry. I breathed. Because I'd earned this. But not long after I returned to Chicago to finish the rollout, things got weird. Matt kept finding ways to bump into me. In the elevator. In the break room. In the lobby where he absolutely did not need to be. He never crossed a professional line. Not exactly. But he'd always try to add just a little emotional weight to his tone. Like, hope you're doing well, delivered with eyes that tried to reach for some version of us that no longer existed. One afternoon, he dropped a file off in the conference room during a team sync. He wasn't supposed to be there. I was standing at the whiteboard mid-sentence when he walked in and quietly placed a folder on the table. Our eyes met for half a second. He gave me this look like, "Do you remember us?" I blinked once and said, "Thanks, Mr. Calloway. Next time, please send it digitally." He nodded and left, and I continued the meeting like nothing happened. Backstory unfolded. A week later, over drinks with some of my new team leads, I got more context than I ever asked for. Apparently, Matt had been applying to promotions aggressively for the past 2 years, none of which panned out. His work had become increasingly sloppy, and people had stopped trusting him to lead projects. He talks a big game, one of them said, but never follows through. Another added, he said his ex-fiancée held him back. That she was too sensitive. That she lacked ambition. I tilted my glass and smiled politely. Interesting, I said. I didn't defend myself. I didn't say, actually, I'm the ex. I didn't have to. Because I'd already disproved every lie just by being there. The conference panel. A month later, I was invited to speak on a Women in Leadership panel in Chicago. The event was hosted by a major tech organization, and Halverson was one of the sponsors. I was asked to give the keynote. The topic? Underrated grit, how to succeed when no one believes in you. When I stepped on stage, my hands were steady. I told my story not by name, but in essence, about how people will sometimes reduce you to a version of yourself that makes them feel bigger. About how there's power in going quiet and building in silence. I said I used to be engaged to someone who told me I was cute for applying to the same job as him. He said I wasn't technical enough, that I didn't think big enough, that I'd never survive in fast-paced environments, so he left to chase something better. I paused, then smiled. Now I manage 3 regional branches of that company. And I don't have to survive, I get to thrive. The applause was thunderous. What I didn't mention was that Matt was in the audience, 2 rows from the back. I'd spotted him before I got on stage. He didn't clap, he just stared. The elevator ride. A few days later, Matt stopped me in the building's elevator. Just the 2 of us. "Elise," he said, after a few moments of silence. "I watched your panel." "Cool," I said. He exhaled. "You really changed." I didn't respond. Then he said the line I wasn't expecting. "I'm sorry. Not just for how I left, but for everything I said about you after." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean calling me dead weight to your team?" He flinched. "Yeah, that." I looked at him. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt bored. He was a closed chapter. "I'm not mad anymore, Matt," I said. "But I'm also not interested in rewriting the story to make you feel better about your part in it." He looked down at his shoes. "You're not who I thought you were," he said quietly. I smiled. "I know. That's the point." The exit interview. Turns out, Matt had been job hunting again. He put in his 2-week notice shortly after the panel. I didn't hear anything until HR requested I attend his exit interview as per policy for managers. So I did. I sat across from him as he filled out the form, awkwardly avoiding eye contact. When it came time for him to speak, he muttered, "I'm leaving for personal reasons." The HR rep asked, "Any final comments?" Matt hesitated, then looked at me. "I should have never underestimated her," he said. "She was never the problem." It wasn't much, but I'll take it. I didn't respond. I just stood, shook his hand, and walked out of the room. After Matt left the company, it felt like a weight had been quietly lifted off the room. No announcement. No farewell email. Just a desk that went empty and a nameplate that disappeared overnight. People noticed, but no one said much. In a way, it was poetic. He had entered that company thinking he'd climb the ladder and leave me behind. But in the end, I'd outpaced him without ever needing to block his path. I just walked my own. Back to me. With Matt gone, the job became simpler. Or maybe I just had more room to breathe. No more dodging awkward run-ins. No more bracing myself for backhanded compliments masked as workplace banter. My team grew. We expanded to a second regional office. I brought on 3 new analysts and 1 junior developer. I started mentoring 2 of our interns who reminded me so much of myself: hungry, anxious, underestimated. We launched a new product line 3 months ahead of schedule. That landed me in a meeting with the CEO and other top execs. When they asked what motivated me, I said, being told I couldn't, and realizing I didn't need anyone's permission to prove them wrong. The message. It had been almost 7 months since I last saw Matt when the email came. Subject line: from someone you used to know. I knew who it was before I opened it. I hesitated. I hovered for a second, then clicked. Elise. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. And I know I burned a bridge I had no right to even step on. But I just wanted to say I'm genuinely proud of you. I watched your panel 3 more times. It hit me hard. You're incredible. And you always were. I just couldn't see it back then. I'm working freelance now, trying to figure things out. If you ever want to grab coffee, not to rehash, just to reconnect, I'd really appreciate it. Either way, thank you for being a better person than I deserved. Matt. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because the chapter was closed. The lesson had been learned. The apology came too late, and I was already too far beyond needing it. Sometimes peace isn't about forgiveness. It's about choosing silence over dragging the past back into your present. Full circle. That fall, the same university where Matt and I met invited me to speak at their Women in Tech Symposium. The theme was turning doubt into drive. I stepped onto that stage, same school, same auditorium, and looked out at rows of young women with notebooks in hand and fire in their eyes. And I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who stayed up late writing cover letters while her fiancé packed for a job he never actually got. The one who felt too small, too emotional, too inexperienced. I started my speech with a story. Not about Matt, but about myself. I said, when someone tells you that you're not qualified, not ready, not smart enough, they're usually just projecting their fear of what you might become if you believed otherwise. So believe otherwise. Believe hard. Believe louder than their doubts. When I finished, one of the students asked, "What was the turning point for you?" I paused, thinking. It wasn't a moment, I said. It was a mindset shift. When I stopped chasing validation and started building things that spoke for me, my work, my integrity, my consistency, everything else followed. The personal win. That December, I took my mom to Italy for Christmas, her dream vacation. We sat under the stars in a quiet cafe in Florence, sipping espresso and talking about nothing and everything. She looked at me and said, "I always knew you'd do something big." I laughed. "No, you didn't." She smiled. "Okay, maybe not at first, but I know it now." That moment meant more than any corner office, because I'd built a life I was proud of. And I got there by refusing to let someone else's low expectations limit my capacity. The last note. A few months ago, I bumped into Matt's cousin at a conference. Totally random. He recognized me, came over, and said, "Matt talks about you sometimes." He said losing you was the moment he realized he wasn't the main character in the story he thought he was writing. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Because the truth is, I wasn't the villain in Matt's life. I wasn't even the plot twist. I was just the one who kept going. Epilogue. You don't always get revenge. You don't always get closure. But if you're lucky, you get the chance to become everything someone once told you you'd never be. And if you're really lucky, you'll do it so well that their apologies show up long after you've stopped needing them. I don't hate Matt. I don't pity him either. I just hope he learns to stop measuring other people by how small they make him feel. As for me, I'm leading a team of 40 now. Just launched a mentorship program for women in STEM. Planning my next big move, which, funny enough, might be writing a book. Because sometimes, the best way to get the last word is to make sure you're the one holding the pen.